if you start pivoting too quickly, right? Like if you go just to where the money is, all of a sudden your product might start becoming something you didn't intend to be, because you're taking money from somebody and say, hey, well, it'd be great if it also did X, Y, and Z. And you're like, well, that's not what we do, but they're paying to keep the lights on. So maybe we pivot, and maybe pivot too early.
All right, we are live. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Agency Growth Engine. And I'm excited today because I have an entrepreneur, Jason, who runs an agency. And actually, we were just talking before we went live. You just made the Inc. 5000 list again, right?
Yep, second year.
That's awesome. So you were 1,000 and some change on there?
Yep, 1,010 I think was this year. So good growth.
And that's serious growth. So just so everybody understands, the Inc. 5000 is not how big your company is, it's how fast you're growing by percentage. And so you probably, what percentage of growth did you say you had to experience to go through that?
Because it's calculated over like a 3-year time horizon, and we somewhere between 500 and 600% growth over,
which
those
is
years.
Crazy.
Yes.
So was that painful growth for you?
It didn't feel like it during the time. I think we're hitting more of that this year, right? I think it's sort of, I always tell people, I've been a part of companies big and small, and I feel like every time you hit some of these time horizons or revenue jumps, you kind of end up falling into these, just things start breaking, right? What worked to get you from 0 to, 100K a month, or, up to 10 million a year, just things start breaking.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, when we did our jump, it was about a 3x jump. We went from about 300,000 a month in recurring revenue, or a little bit below that, to over $1 million, and we did it really fast. I don't remember a lot of it, but I learned more about business in that year than all the other time combined. It felt like, or it was probably just I was learning faster, and it was exhilarating, but it was also one of the more painful times in my life. Like, I wouldn't want to go through that again. I would rather have steady growth than do that again. Yeah. It was so big, and it was very painful. Like, we lost a lot of clients. We grew still. We still grew, but we lost clients through the process. We lost team members through the process. Yep. I didn't know how to recruit yet. There was a lot of things I just didn't know.
It's tough because I've always felt like, I want to build a business where I get people to work for a long time, right? I was a product of working at a company for 7-8 years, which I thought was awesome. I would love to build a place where people want to be around for that long, because it means you get your culture right, you're providing them. But when you grow that fast, right, like they join at a time when you've got, whatever, if you got 10 people, 15, 20 people, right, they're in a lot of meetings, they see everything, depending on how transparent, like depending on all the values and everything. But when you go and you start scaling, like a lot of those things are no longer true. And it's not that they're less valuable to the company. It's just like you can't all of a sudden continue to have one-on-ones with everybody at some scale. And so, and it feels like you're not as accessible, or you don't value them. And that's not the case at all. It's just, you just have to change a little bit. And that's tough for not everybody's comfortable with that change.
And here's what people say: you guys have changed. You're going corporate, right? Like, you're going corporate. And it's like, yeah, well, I have to have organizational structures here.
Yeah.
Now.
Like
I can't.
Yeah. Like there was a time when it was like, this was a few years ago. It was like, there's a handful of us. It was like, all right, well, there's a new client. Let's everybody get on the phone. And that way you learn what I learn, and you hear it, I hear it. So like, we don't need a whole lot of rigorous note taking, and like, because who needs a project management system? We're all in the same thing. Just we're in the same room. Just tell me what you got going on. Well, that no longer works. And now you've got people like, hey, I didn't have to do this before. And it's like, well, yes, that is true. But there's also 15, 20 other people now that weren't there before. So
have you ever seen that graph that shows, like, okay, if there's 2 people, there's only 2 lines of communication.
Yes.
And if there's 4, then there's like, now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 communication.
Yeah. It's like,
and then you go, it exponentially grows.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And I think it almost, I'd be curious to see how that works. We had this conversation with the team the other day where we're realizing a lot of conversations were happening in Slack, but on a one-to-one basis. And I was like, hey guys, like, we got client channels that are not external, but they're just internal to us. I'm like, if you just have those conversations out in the open, because they're not like that way, anybody else who works on the account can see what's going on and can either they're getting the information or can chime in. And it's one of those realizations, right? Like, we've got more people, you've got all these side conversations, and people are having to repeat themselves, or you're just playing a game of telephone that is sort of unnecessary in the long run.
Yeah, really quickly, just tell everybody what kind of marketing agency you are, just so everybody's on the same page.
Sure, yeah, that's good. So we run, so I run Avani Media. We primarily work with B2B technology companies, and we do really just highly focused on paid media. So we're a paid media agency.
So when you say B2B tech, like what does that mean? So like SaaS products that focus on
Yep.
B2B or
Yep.
okay.
Think like SaaS companies. Think like we work with some of like the Fortune 100, all the way down to like startups, right? Who are just kind of rolling out of their first round of funding.
And you're helping them get more first downloads or what
Yep. Yep. So we help them drive everything from like downloads or convert users from free to paid, or just if they're more maybe more established or have a more traditional sales team and sales cycle, driving leads. And so we primarily just focus on outbound marketing. So we don't help with SEO, we don't help with
Mhm.
SEM, like that's not us. We don't do website. But what we do is say, hey, if you want to put money behind paid promotions, like we know how to go find. If you're trying to scale usage in Germany and you want to, you've really got to tap into the German market, we know all the publishers there.
Wow. Okay.
So
That's awesome. So you can this is really a global more of a global approach if needed.
yeah. So we operate and we execute campaigns all over the world, including China.
So what's been like one of your more interesting clients that you get to work with?
One of our more interesting ones is Nvidia, just because they do a little bit of everything, and they're probably of our clientele, they're more well known just because they have a really large B2C side of their business that sells graphics chips and gaming chips and all those things. So
Hmm.
they're one, and they just have so many lines of business, and they sell things to every sort of just every business out there. It's a really fun account, plus the partnership. I think working with companies is a lot of fun, and depending on what they do, but it's really about like the client and the partnership that makes it really special.
Oh, 100%. And now you guys are at about 17 team members and you're projected to do about 12 million this year. Is that still accurate?
Yeah, we'll do about that, and yeah, I think we'll end. Yeah, we're about 17 now. Still got a bunch of positions open. I'll see what we can hire for the rest of the year, but maybe push north of 20 folks, maybe 25.
Got it. Okay, awesome. And yeah, I was going to say that is really good. If you're doing 12 million with 17 team members, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty lean. And I think you kind of run into positions, right, where how lean do you go, or how many people do you have? I think we're starting to explore uh, just like staffing up a little bit more. How do you, because it allows you to buy. I mean, you have more people, so you're able to do more things. You've got more time to either dive deeper into analytics and reporting, or help a client solve a problem. Like, hey, we want to do an integration into Salesforce. Okay, well, do we have somebody on staff that can help, and are we missing out
Yeah.
on opportunity because we don't have that?
So yeah, that's one of the struggles that people really, especially younger entrepreneurs, is that they try to scale and be profitable at the same time. And those two things don't typically go together. You have to reinvest. So how are you balancing that right now?
It's really challenging. We want to, it's just definitely not easy. Like we are profitable. That was a big thing for me. I came from a company that raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and then got bought for pennies on the dollar before that, and had a bunch of people's stock who was worth nothing. And so one of the big things for me is I want to be profitable. I want the team to know, hey, the profit doesn't just like go into a bank somewhere and people just take it out. It's like, this is all reinvestable money that we try to do. We try to make sure that we've got enough runway. Should we lose a big client, right? I think depending on, I think if you've worked at a big agency before, especially in like marketing, I mean, my first day when I worked for a big agency, my first day on the job, we lost not an account, luckily not an account I was about to work on, but we lost a major account, and 100 people were let go that one day that I started. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to do that. And so I want to be able to weather, if a big client wants to move on, we'll have hard conversations internally about why were we not a good fit, or what did we do wrong, or maybe we just grew apart. But I don't want to have to say goodbye to people if we can plan for it. So but it's hard to balance that growth, right? And I think we're trying to do some things on the growth side that are, I think, less traditional from an agency perspective, like standing up a true like biz dev and outbound team, like just that is just going hard on sort of like outbound prospecting.
How's that
Because
been going?
Good. So we're 6 weeks into it, so it's still
Okay.
really new. But it's starting to pay off. I think we're starting to get. I mean, we don't we have we don't have that many clients, right? I think last year was like 40 billable clients, which is decent. It's a fair number.
Yeah.
But like I think we've had 11 meetings in the last few weeks just from this outbound effort, and some of it is
Wow.
just a refocus of some people's time, right? Hey, let's focus on
So like, is that
what
like
is
email or DMs or what kind of outreach?
yeah, it's a lot of email, a lot of LinkedIn, and even just some cold calling. We've had some interesting luck landing, some really big companies just from cold calling, and
Is
kind
it
of getting
competitive?
lucky.
Is the B2B SaaS product marketing crowd, is that like a really crowded area or not? I don't know much about it.
Yeah, it's I would say depending on the service line, you operate in, like the SEO, the SEM stuff is really, really crowded. And I think the space that we operate in and the clients we have can be crowded, and it's just unfortunately consumed by a lot of the really big holding companies. So the WPP, the Omnicoms of the world. And so you've got to be able to differentiate against those because we're not going to win. We're not going to win playing their same model. Like we have no
Yeah.
chance. And so we just have to differentiate ourselves, and we differentiate ourselves based on how we service clients and like how we, like our go to market, like our pricing and packaging.
Got it. So so you're more lean, you're able to be more lean, so you're able to pass that on to them. And then what do you mean by your packaging?
So like we don't like which is I think this is relatively unique in the space, and maybe it'll come back to bite me, but like we don't do retainers. We primarily, if a client wants to do it, we will, but a lot of our clients like to buy project, like on a project basis. So for some of those clients it could be an annual contract, right? They want to buy it for the whole year. They want to know what they're locking in. We've got other clients that want to buy or need to buy on the quarterly basis, and if they've got a bunch of different business units they operate, they need to contract each individual business unit separately,
Hmm.
which a lot of big agencies would want you to roll it all together, commit all the money up front. And we just say, hey, just tell us what you need us to do and how you want it to be billed. And we'll, if that's a bunch of $20,000 projects, that's totally fine. If it's one $4 million project, that's fine as well. And so we just really try to be flexible and make it easy for
Got it.
procurement to say yes, and make doing business easy.
Yeah, make it easy. And then so that's going to bring you, do you have like an avatar that you guys focus on, or is it kind of like anybody who's B2B right now, and or is there people starting to come that you notice, hey, we're really good at this?
Yeah, I think we've gotten better about understanding, hey, like while we can help a lot of different clients, we're not always the best fit for everybody. So as much as I would love to say it's companies with 1,000 or more employees and they kind of look like this, it's the size of the company can vary because it's more about how mature their like marketing machine and engine is, because
Mm,
we are really good at like driving leads and traffic, but if a company's not really set up to like handle that really well, then it's just not, it's like we know it's not going to work. And so what I hate doing is taking money and running a program or putting
same.
something
Yeah.
together, and then the client's like, oh, it didn't work, and I'm like, well, I mean, if we would have just asked those questions ahead of time, we could have
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
said, hey, like you know what, you're going to be better off going, and here's a great agency, like they can help you run paid social or whatever the case is, and maybe they're going to be a better fit than working with us at this stage. We'd love to work with you at some point, but maybe not today.
Yeah. So what are some of that's a great point, guys. We're the same thing, but we're brick and mortar. So it's, hey, I can run marketing all day long, but if you don't answer your phones, it doesn't really matter, right? It's
Yeah.
well, something that I've learned is no marketing has ever succeeded on the back of poor operations or a poor
Hmm.
system. It's impossible. It doesn't matter how good it is. So how do you right now? What are some of the things, some of the biggest obstacles that you're dealing with growing?
That's a good question. I would say before we stood up this outbound effort, it was really just our growth was really tied to client referrals, which I don't think is that uncommon in the agency space.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think it's like a lot of people that's how they grow. It's just hard to forecast that growth,
Yeah.
and so it's sort of hard to plan headcount and kind of just expenditures and all of those things. And so that became a challenge. And so it's sort of like, how do you get something where you have a machine? Like we candidly didn't really do a great job at building a lead magnet, driving traffic, just sort of any of those key things, because referrals, I mean, we had this drawing up on a whiteboard that was like the referral tree, right? So this client referred this one, and then they referred, and it was massive, and that was awesome, and it lasted us, the company's been around for 15 years. It's lasted us that
Oh,
long.
wow.
But now it's like, hey, it's still working really well, but we could also go do some things on our own and try to drive more value, more business, and also really start to begin to test messaging really quickly, right? Like, what is working, what's not, where are we falling short of our value and our promise to the client.
Do you
And so
feel
that's
do you
kind of
feel
been,
do you feel that you're more equipped to set up marketing for yourself because it is B2B and that's what you guys kind of already do?
yeah, I definitely think so. And we've been on, I would say we've been testing a bunch of different channels. And I think one of the things is, like, anything that we recommend to a client, we want to do ourselves, right? Because that's the value. And so, I mean,
Yeah.
if we can't do it for ourselves, why would we do it for a client?
Yeah.
And so we put a lot of those into the market, and now it's just, how do we make sure we're saying yes to the right folks, and saying, and make sure we can refer folks that maybe aren't going to be a great fit somewhere else.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of agencies struggle because most agencies, or at least the ones I talk to, and this is how I am. We're B2C, so we're
Mm-hmm.
helping businesses get customers, right? So
Yep.
that's a very particular way to market. And then when somebody like myself then goes, "Oh, I want to market for ourselves, B2B," it's such a different beast.
It's definitely
Yeah, go
helpful
ahead.
when, like, when we're marketing, like, we're trying to land clients that just like our clients are, right? We don't, we would be, I would be not great at trying to do the B2C marketing. I'm not as familiar with it, but I can definitely see how you couldn't turn that playbook that you've used for a client just back
Yes.
into your marketing team. Be like, hey, we'd have great results here. Let's just go replicate it over here for us. And I mean, you
Yeah.
might get a lot of
Yeah, because
views, but maybe not the right
the buying
clients.
exactly the buying decision tree, if you will, for B2C, you're going straight to the consumer, and they get to decide right at
Mm-hmm.
that second if they're going to buy that hamburger, or buy those shoes, or whatever, right? And there's not a lot of roadblocks preventing that person from buying once you can get the right messaging and that person says yes. For B2B, there's so many ways to say no. And even if I want to say yes, there's ways to say no, right? So if
Oh yeah.
maybe my contracts aren't up yet, maybe I'm the decision maker, but you're meeting with the marketing person first. Maybe it's there's politics involved. Maybe I'm scared to lose my job. I think you'll do a great job. It's high risk, high reward, but I might lose my job if you don't knock it out of the park. So I'm going to go with the safe company.
We talk about that all the time to our clients, right? Like, there's this concept of, and even in marketing, this happens, right? Where it's like, maybe this company doesn't do the best job at it, but we know it's a very safe bet. We know, like, there's nobody ever got fired for buying this product. So, it's a safe bet.
just so people understand that. So there might be some people listening that don't understand that. So if you go work for a big company, any big company, and your job is to buy new software, you can either go buy the Microsoft software, or you can use Google, the Google software. And the Google might seem like a better choice because it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be more agile, it's going to be easier to use. But if there's a security breach, or if something happens where Microsoft is set up for it and Google wasn't, you could be fired for making that decision. So you go and you make a lot of people in that position make the safe decision, not the best decision. And
Yep.
that would be going with Microsoft for your business over maybe the Google products. I think that happens all the time in business, and people don't think through that.
Yeah. And it's actually what's interesting, and this kind of takes me down a different path, but we have clients. So oftentimes we work with clients on putting together media plans, and they tell us, hey, we want you to put this publisher on the media plan, or this channel. And most of the time, like, we will give our point of view, but it's their money. We will do what they want with it. And we just have this concept of, like, hey, the best thing we can do is take 75% of your budget and do what you want with it. Let's take 25% and test new channels, test new publishers. And that way we can start measuring, the return on investment, and say, hey, if all things being equal, like, we know you're not going to get fired for this publisher, but here's 3 more that are cheaper, newer, like startup, whatever it is. And guess what? If we can measure this out over 3-6 months, oh look, your ROI is starting to turn better in these smaller, more niche publishers, because they're cheaper, because they have a more focused audience, and then they start saying, okay, well now I trust you, and now we go with that recommendation.
That's a
But yes,
genius.
it's a
So,
very
so
hard.
just
It's hard.
taking that sliver and being able to test and optimize against that, and really gives you a baseline on both sides. So that's amazing. Now, if I was a small SaaS company, or I'm just launching a product, what are the first steps that you're going to recommend for me from a marketing perspective?
Oh, I think it's, I've got a good friend that does a lot of like go to market consulting with startups, and so much of it is just understanding who is your target, right? Who's your avatar. And I think
Mhm.
depending on the makeup of that startup, right? Like if you think about, if the founders are like engineers by trade, right? Like they might, like that's going to be that might be something they've not thought about. Or hey, how do you go hire your first salesperson? A very challenging thing for somebody who's never had to do it before, never been in sales. And so I think really understanding who are we selling to, and equally, and we just talked about this, we're just getting good at it, who you're not selling to.
Yeah.
Because if it can depend on where you are in the revenue generating part of being a startup. But if you start pivoting too quickly, right? Like if you go just to where the money is, all of a sudden your product might start becoming something you didn't
Mhm.
intend it to be, because you're taking money from somebody and say, hey, well, it'd be great if it also did X, Y, and Z. And you're like, well, that's not what we do, but they're paying to keep the lights on. So maybe
Yep.
we pivot, and maybe
Yep.
pivot too early.
What else? What else? So, what would be the next step? So, let's say I have my avatar dialed in. I know
Yep.
right in the market where I fit to that avatar. I know how we bring value to them, and it makes sense to them, and they want that. Then, what's the next step after that?
I mean, I think it's really starting to understand how you can sort of be seen, because you're going to have an awareness problem, right? Like you're a startup. Like you can go on Product Hunt, you can go on some of these places where you might find some of the early adopters from a SaaS perspective, and that's always going to be good. Twitter's obviously a good place for the tech crowd, but I think it's more about how do you make sure people know who you are, and understand what problem you solve, and being really clear. I remember I was talking with I didn't really know this was a thing, but a like an AI computer vision company. I think they're based out in Germany. And they had, hey, these are all the markets. Like this is our avatar, right? It was all over the place. And what we did was we went and looked, and we didn't end up doing like any real advertising work because they're not ready for it. But what we helped them understand is like, hey, this is how big the market is in agriculture, and in all of these countries. And it sort of helped them understand. They had like 4 or 5 key markets they thought they were going to play well, and they had sort of some customers. And we said, hey, like if you look at some of these industries, like they're just not big enough. Like you're not, it doesn't make sense. You're probably going to have, and I think it turned out like in Europe, agriculture was the biggest opportunity for them for their computer vision, whereas in like North and South America, it was slightly different.
Mhm.
And so some of it's just understanding market sizing and where you're going to fit
And
in
usually,
best
you need
for those
outside
markets.
perspective to help you with that, right? Usually, you're not going to be able to figure that out yourself because you are in the forest, and it's hard to see. You're walking through the forest. It's kind of hard to see everything that's
Yeah.
going
And
on.
yeah, and it's like what we did was we just listened to them. They helped us understand. We wanted to figure out who their avatar was, sort of where they played, where they thought they were going to play well, and then we just went and scoured and looked at the data, kind of found all of this, first party, primary and secondary research, and then cobbled it all together. And then because we're not in it every day, we can just kind of take a step back and say, oh, here's some interesting trends. And
Yeah.
it's like, look, you know the business better than we do. We're just telling you what we see and saying maybe it's worth having some specific messaging to these companies. And guess what? There's not that many
Hmm.
in agriculture that can afford your computer vision. This isn't for every farmer. This is for the mass, the very, very large agricultural companies out there. So guess what? Now all of a sudden your marketing is a little bit easier, because
So it's
it's going to be
basically
hard to break in.
it's product market fit. Basically, it's just
Yeah.
it's hammering that over and over and over again through different ways. So it's
Yeah.
getting your avatar clear, getting how you're going to fit into that, figuring out, is there other opportunities in different ways. Yeah, and so that's huge. Now, how have you? So this is like very specific knowledge that you have to be able to successfully market these things. How have you scaled your team to make sure that knowledge, that's a hard thing, like even in dental
Yeah.
marketing, which is way less complex than what you're doing, it's hard to do. And so there's different levels to it. How are you solving for that right now?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, I think like a lot of us, right, is just was doing it all, right? Like trying to
Mhm.
be in every call, every client conversation. We've tried a few different ways over the last year or two, and I don't think they worked that well, right? One was, hey, um, we've got like these strategists and account managers, right? How do I help train them, and then kind of just check in to make sure that the plans they're putting together make sense, or how, not necessarily how I would do it, but using what I know, using what they know. That I think worked until it didn't, and now we've centralized a lot of what we just call like media planning, strategy, and analytics, right? To say, hey, if we've got a team and I sit on that team and I'm a part of it, right? It's like, hey, we all work together. More minds are better than one. To say, hey, what do we know from the industry? How can we put together the best marketing plan based on what the client wants to achieve, and based on the publishers we've talked to and all of this, and say, this is what we think is going to be the best plan for the client. And so that's how we're operating it today. So it's more of like a specialized team that does it, that all of the clients can tap into.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Is your next, as you grow, so let's say you go
Yep.
to 20 million and then, 30 million, is your next biggest hurdle is probably going to be recruiting. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. I think recruiting's one of our challenges now.
Yeah. And so recruiting, just for everybody listening, what happens in every stage of every entrepreneur is I got to get clients. So you go out and you get clients, you knock on, I mean, you do whatever it takes when you first start out, right?
Yep.
And then you figured out how to do that. And then you hire a team, and it's a small team, so everybody can work together and there's a culture. Then you kind of grow a little bit and you kind of cobble everything together. But then you get to a place where now you need very specific skill sets to help you. Someone who's just going to help you with the finances, or someone who's just going to help you with the marketing. And now you have more money to start hiring that, but they don't want to work for you because they can tell it's a dumpster fire, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's like the really skilled people are going to look at your company and go, I don't want to come in and fix that. So you're going to get a caliber of player. They come in, they get you to the next stage, but then you get to a place where there are calibers of players that will work with you. But just like clients, the clients that you have today wouldn't have worked with you day one. And the
Right.
team members that you have today wouldn't have worked with you more than likely day one. You couldn't have paid them, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a constant game that you have to keep playing. Have you thought through how you're going to tackle that yet?
Yeah. I think one of the ways that I think will work, haven't, had some success with it, but I think some of it's like the level, the caliber of folks that you want to go get, that we need to go get, are working at the big agencies. And so there could be some cost or like some pay disparity that we're not able to meet. And so we sort of have to offset that with, hey, this is why you'd want to come work with us, right?
Opportunity.
Opportunity. Some of it's like, hey, you can put your thumbprint on the company, right? We're still small. There's a lot we don't know. There's a lot that we know we can do better. Process.
Well, also,
Um,
so there's people out there that are maybe an account manager at a big company, and they're part of like an amazing team, and they might have somebody over their department as a department leader or director that's amazing, and they're not going to unseat them, right? Like the
yeah,
chances of them unseating them are very slim because they're so amazing. And so this account manager might also have amazing skills and leadership skills, though. And so if you provide the opportunity to say, hey, you come over here, I'll let you not only have this position, but this position, you can grow into it. Those opportunities are very attractive to people.
yeah, yeah. It's the opportunity to grow, and kind of like, how do you find, for lack of a better, like better term or phrase, like how do you go scout, right? How do you go find that next up and coming talent? And I think that is just like through a lot of just sheer networking, right? And just like, got to talk to people, you got to get to know people, and part of that is we do that on like the client side to a degree, which isn't so much a networking play, but it's like, hey, I just want to get your thoughts on the market, and this isn't a sales pitch. I'm not here to tell you why we'd be so great, but I do generally want to know what you're seeing, what you're hearing, because it's going to help us become better. And maybe if this works and you think we can offer you value, then great. If not, no big deal. But I also think that's true on the sort of recruiting side, right? How do you create experiences that will put you in the same room as some of this up and coming talent, which I don't think I've cracked yet. I think that's been just like LinkedIn, like trying to reach out and talk
Yeah.
to people. It's that, and then it's also like, how can you come in and help finding, I think one of the things I value, and this was because it helped me when I was earlier in my career, was having a company that like really, like if you could do a really good job at your day job and then say, hey, there's a bunch of other problems or opportunities or whatever you want to call them, right, at the company that you can go solve. I kind of want somebody who wants to do that, right? They're going to come in and just say, hey, I want to, I can help, and I'm going to fix all of these things, and until I can't. And I think that only works for certain people.
Yeah, that attracts a certain kind of person, because a lot of
Yeah.
people want to come into a system. Most people want to come into a system that's working already.
Yeah, and I think we have some systems, and I think they work for now, right? But again, I think I know they will break in the next year, and I think it's just it's being okay and comfortable with like, hey, this isn't always going to work, right? We know what we know today, but if we go get another massive client, guess what? Things might have to break, and that's just the way it is, and that's what sort of keeps it fun. It makes it stressful, sure, but we try to keep it at least a very flat level of stress, right? I don't want it to be like too crazy.
Yeah. And then you get to the place where you start to have some major wins, you have the systems, and then you have the capital to be able to afford somebody who's going to come in and be more of like a director or C-suite, and they will come in and fix things at a whole nother level because they have so much experience. They've already been doing it for so long. It'd be like you going and helping an agency that only has one or two people. You're going to be able to tell them right away, you're doing this wrong, right? Like, and right away bring massive value, quick wins. And so it's very interesting. It's, just going up that ladder has been fun. It's been a learning experience for me. One of the things that a lot of people are intimidated by is just when you get around better people. I have people on my team that I tell them all the time, I wish I could manage people like you. I wish the way they manage people, right? So I'm managing them, but they're 10x my manager skills, right? I'm not a great manager.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the hard. That's so hard for, I think, managers of sort of almost any like experience level, but especially newer managers, right? Like, be comfortable hiring somebody better than you, right? Or it's like my goal is like I want people way better than me, right? I shouldn't be the best salesperson. I can't be right.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, I can't be the best planner, right? Just because I mean, yes, I've been doing this for a long time, but like I can't be it. I can't be the best at everything. I need to go find people better than me. And that's what we try to find people, and people who have different sort of experiences, whether life experiences, backgrounds, because it's like there's just so much that, like, yes, we can go hire a bunch of people from marketing in the marketing world, but there's value to finding people who have worked on the B2C side, right? Who have worked in, finance and fintech and all the other areas, because they're going to bring just different levels of experience that we've made in channels and thoughts that we've never even considered.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I know you've been listening to the Agency Growth Engine podcast. Because I told you before you got on, I said, you're kind of my avatar for agency, this podcast that I have. So what things have you learned so you can be nice, like say the nice thing? And then how could we improve from a content standpoint to help you?
I think what's always interesting is just hearing how somebody else has done it. And I think even though like we're at a level and it's growing and it's great, I think it's even hearing those like 0 to 1 stories of like, hey, this is how I did it. Because I think there are things that I learned. I'm like, wait, like getting the next client doesn't have to be about, like, one of the things that we try to do right now is kind of like build the scale, right? Like, how do we make sure we're doing the things that allow us to scale? But at the same time, we're not that big. Like, not everything we do has to scale. So and in the early days, that's what I like hearing. It's like, hey, we did this one thing and it worked, or it didn't work, and I'm gonna go try this other thing, or I'm gonna, even I'm a self-professed like productivity nerd and junkie. So like anytime somebody's like, oh, here's my Notion, or here's my ClickUp, or here's my Monday, like, oh my gosh, I watch it. And so I just love hearing all of that. And I mean, I think even just, I mean, I saw your teaser with Tim. I'm a huge fan of his. So like, I think
he like, manages a 250 person team. Yeah. And he's like a manager inside of an even bigger company. So it was cool. We didn't go too much into like his job, which he kind of keeps his job separate from his TikTok life. We kind of have to in that position, but just getting his insight. He's a very interesting individual.
Yeah, and I think like there's just a lot to be learned, whether it's like the work life balance or integration, or how you know, like, hey, here's sort of how I kind of set up and structure my day, right? And I think
Hmm.
yes, some of that is um like very popular on TikTok or whatever.
Hmm.
But what the reason I watch it and I like and I gravitate towards some of that sort of content is largely just because I'm curious as to how people operate.
Hmm.
I'm always trying to learn and just get 1% better. And like I tell my team all the time, I'm like, the way I operate doesn't mean I expect you to do the same, right? Just because of like
Yeah.
I just get up super early. I always have. Plus, I've got kids and it's
Hmm.
crazy in the morning, right? But like this is just how it works for me. And I try to, put in a good shift every day. Um, and then close it down and go home and run around and exhaust myself with the children. Um,
Yeah.
but so no, I think I've learned a lot just learning from this, like the little nuggets from everybody. And it's the stories that really that I find a lot of value in. Um, and I
What can we
think
do?
like
What kind of content would you like to see more of?
I I really do. I think I think this goes back to like what's good too, and I think part of this is just the diversity, right? So it's not just like B2C, right? It's like I think
Yep.
having, because I think there's one thing I found, and I was actually talking with a company who sells like software to dentists, and so I mentioned you to them, but
Thanks. I
like
appreciate it.
they sell software to dentists and auto dealers and all these things, and I was like, it amazes me, it truly amazes me how much opportunity there is, and like there's all
Oh,
these niches that like if you don't play in that space, you have no idea are a
no
thing,
idea.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And for instance, like we work with a client who sells, they do like parking garage technology. Didn't know, like obviously knew that you went to parking garage, took a ticket, but like didn't know anything about it until they became a client. And now we know a lot about parking garages and storage and just all of these things. And there's so many niches. And so I think it's great to like highlight those because it just shows the opportunity that's out there. And it's like,
Yep.
hey, yeah, if you niche down and say, hey, I don't just do Facebook ads for everybody. I do
Mhm.
Facebook ads for theaters, and
Yeah.
theaters, specifically in this, area, Texas or whatever the case is, right? Or just off Broadway or
Yep.
just local. It's amazing at like you can build a, depending on what your goal is of building the agency, right? Are you building a lifestyle business? Or are you building a business you want to exit? Like, but you could build a business that throws off a ton of money to the owner
And be
and
known
serves a
in the
small market.
industry, and be
Yeah.
known in that industry as like the main guy in that industry, the main
Yeah.
company
Yeah.
in that industry.
It's like, do you want to be the big fish in a small pond, or a little fish in the big
Yep.
pond? And I think depending on what your goal is, like the big fish in a small pond is not
Works
half
great.
bad, right? Like that's a
No, it's
great,
not bad at all.
like it's fantastic. And so I mean, I think being able to highlight those stories from just very very different industries, because what I do think is interesting is a lot of the fundamentals are the same, right? You're building an agency at the end of the day,
Yep. Yep.
whether you're just focusing on what channels work really well for driving foot traffic to retail versus what drives e-commerce sales versus what drives B2B SaaS hardware. Like yes, those are going to be different, but the fundamentals of building a team and whether you outsource or how do you work with contractors and some of the very specifics, I think can be super interesting.
That's awesome. Is there anything that I didn't cover with you that you think that we should have covered?
No, I mean, I selfishly, I did a lot of the talking. I guess I'm the guest, but I would, I think just learning more. I'm just super excited to learn more from the rest of your guests, from you. I'm fascinated by how to grow and everything.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. You've been, this has been really cool. This has helped me a lot understand this different segment of the industry. Give me a productivity hack that you're into right now.
Oh man. Um, so I've gone through, I was using Roam Research for a while, and like this bidirectional linking database that was all the rage. Still is for a lot of people. I'm back to just bullet journal, just kind of writing it all down, trying to make sense of it. And I'm religious about my calendar. So like I track my time, and I kind of bucket it. I don't know if anybody hasn't seen it, go
Yeah.
watch there's there's a podcast, I think with Rob Deerdeck, about how he tracks and manages his time. He's
He's
famous from,
insane.
he's
He's
insane.
insane. The way,
It
yeah,
is, it is
it's too much
fantastic.
for
I
me.
learned
Like,
so
it is really
much.
good. I learned a lot, but I'm just like, bro, I don't want to be that optimized. Like, that's cool that you're that optimized, but
Yeah.
he's like, yep, I spend this. I was shocked. Like, he knew
Yeah.
how much time he was spending in every aspect of his life and what the ROI was for that time.
Yeah, I don't do that. But I do think it's interesting just to say like, okay, like, how long have, like sleeping, like how much am I getting enough sleep? And like, am I spending,
Yeah.
I swung way too far over one time. It was like trying to track like how much time am I spending on strategy versus sale. And I was like, it's
Yep.
too much. Because you spend more time tracking and just doing those things. I'm like, all right, how much time am I just spending doing like good, solid work? How much time am I spending on my health? How much time am I spending with my kids and my family? Because if that starts falling out of balance, then I'm not going to be a good leader, and I'm not going to be I'm not going to be a servant leader. I'm not going to be doing the things I need to be doing. And so I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, taking care of my kids and my wife and the family, and as well as the business.
Totally agree. One of the things that I've been doing, it's new for me, is I'm not in my email anymore. So I have somebody curating all my emails, passing them over to me, getting them into a folder for me. And so that when I used to spend 2-3 hours a day in my email, now I'm down to like 15, 20 minutes a day.
Oh,
And then,
I love that.
And then anything that I need to do, I don't have to-do list. Anything I need to do goes on my calendar. So I have meetings, and then I have here, you need to take care of this thing. It's an hour, it's 15 minutes, it's 10 minutes. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't have any to-do list anymore. I have one Slack channel where I put everything. Here's all the things that I have. I'm really testing this out. I like it so far. It's a little nerve-wracking because I'm a big email person. I believe that like email is one of the best project management tools in the world for an individual, not for a team.
Yep.
But like for me personally, it's like, cool, I'm emailing this person. I'm putting all the directions in there. I'm putting notes so I remember for next time. I'm sending it out. I'm snoozing it. So then I'm going to follow up with 2 days before.
Yep.
And then I'm going to snooze it to make sure my team follow. Like there's all kinds of cool tricks you can use with Gmail, but I was spending too much time in it. It was too much. And so that's something that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. It's just been going well.
Yeah, I would love to learn more about that. I've been, I've gone back and forth. Like, how do I manage this? Like, so right now, basically, I just write everything down in a journal, and then I try to basically what I did like on Friday and over the weekend was just write it all down and then go ahead and schedule it. Right, put it on the calendar. Make sure there's a time block for it. Make sure that I've got time to do the right things, and then also just religiously audit the calendar, right? Like, do I need to be doing this week? Is this that important?
Well, that's the other thing. So then I don't touch my calendar. I'm not allowed to touch my calendar.
I should be anything banned on for doing that too.
Yeah, because it takes so much time. So like I have a dedicated person that's what they're doing. And so I'm just dumping notes to them. Like I need 15 minutes creative time for this. And then it's their job to learn what we're trying to optimize for. We're not there yet. Is not just saving me time, but what time is most valuable. So like I have 8 hours a day and I could answer emails for 8 hours a day, or I could be on a sales call, or I can do a podcast, or I can do a webinar, or like, so which one has the highest ROI value and which one can other people do, and then work backwards and learning that's where I'm optimizing right now. It's been very effective so far.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, is that a person that's like full-time with you?
Yeah. It's an executive assistant. But she didn't
awesome.
have executive assistant experience. We're building it from the ground up. So I had to have somebody I really trusted and I knew personally, because she's in like finances. She's helping me.
Yeah, there's just a lot.
I have like a second home, or I have rentals, and like someone didn't pay the rent or the insurance is up. She takes care of all that. So I'm not thinking about that stuff. She's also in like sending me thank you cards for everybody. Like I'm in personal and other stuff. I'm really involved at like my church. So I have all kinds of things I manage there. She helps me with all of that from like a logistics standpoint, make sure that all happens, gets on my calendar on the weekends. So there's a lot there that if it wasn't somebody I trusted, I would have a hard time with that.
Yeah. Is she local to you or no?
Yeah, she is.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Do you find that to be more helpful than like if she was
with
I don't
certain
know,
areas,
somewhere else.
most definitely for certain things. I could definitely live without it. Like it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me for the right person, but it does help with certain things that she knows of all the area and she knows what's going on. Like I'm getting a pool in my backyard. She helped me coordinate all that, so I didn't have to like stop work. Like so, like let's give an example.
Yeah.
This is real life stuff, right? Like okay, so I want to get a pool in my backyard, or let's just say you want to get your lawn resodded, right? So you have to stop. They're probably going to come Monday through Friday, sometime while you're working. You're going to have to schedule an hour. You're going to have to make all these decisions that really, frankly, you probably don't care about or want to make. And then you might have to make one or two big decisions that you actually do care about. Well, you just wasted an hour and a half. Like that's an hour, 90 minutes, not wasted, but it's gone now.
Yeah.
And you could have what did you get? What was your ROI? I got a lawn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what if I would have used that for a sales call or a webinar or something like that? It's like, or if I would have done a one-on-one with my team to help them level up, the ROI is just like not even close, right? And so
it's like one of those. It's one of those things. Like, so I have an executive assistant as well, although she's leaving me to go on maternity, and then staying at home with the baby. So, which is great. We're definitely gonna miss her. And so I'm trying to think through like, okay, how do I what do we do now? What do we change? And it's like one of the windows broke on our front door, and it was the same thing. It was like I could figure out like, who do we talk to? How do we do this? And it's just like, hey, can you figure this out? Like, just tell me what it costs, and we'll make a decision about whether or not we're going to do it, or we're going to get a whole new front door. I have no idea. But yeah, it's like, how do you just optimize that time? And I think one of the things that I've learned is, and you asked me about this earlier, how do you take all your knowledge and give it out to your team, right? And we do like internal webinars, right? Like, or just meetings, like training, like, hey, I'm going to put together a training on native advertising, basics all the way down to the the more advanced stuff, and everybody can learn from it. And maybe it'll be, who knows, maybe it'll be free one day, or maybe it just stays internal. I don't know, but at least the team can level up from it. And that's a way that takes my time from an hour, and then it infinitely lives on, because I don't have to give that training again.
We need to do just a productivity episode. I feel like
yes,
I would love that. Well, how do people reach out to you if someone wants to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing? How do people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so we are we're at avanimedia.com. You can find me at Jason_Gladu on most of the social networks, or just send me an email. It's jason.gladu@avanimedia.com. Happy to help out with anybody. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk to people. So,
well, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for coming on today, and can't wait to drop this episode.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.